make it public later on, but that should not trouble you. Okay, over to Binoy. Yeah, Binoy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you for the immensely useful discussion. So regarding migration, I come from Kerala. Actually, I'm based out of Kerala, but I grew up in Chennai. So Kerala has not been my home for a long time, actually. But the past 2 years since I've lost my job in Dubai, I've been here. Uh, Dr. Jamila was talking about not being the idea not being spoken in churches. I see the reverse here. Actually, people are encouraged to migrate. If you're if you stay in Kerala, they don't respect you. It's kind of a very strange. I mean, I've not experienced this, so it's a fairly new experience for me. So, if you say that you're working in India, you're working in Kerala, they don't respect you. They don't really value you. So, even my father-in-law says you cannot make a living by staying in Kerala. So, I find the opposite effect here. People are encouraged to migrate, and if you say that you come from Gulf, like Dubai or from US, they kind of respect you. I don't know. Seems the culture is pretty strong here. So I don't know. What's your take on that? Churches, people are encouraged to migrate. Like they say, you can't make a living here. It's better to get out of this place.
Well, I don't think they seem to have a very good idea of mission at all then. The encouragement to migrate is purely on economic and social and cultural reasons, which is well, there is some validity to that, but we are talking here about mission, right? So if you're saying that the church has no understanding of mission, has no understanding of our responsibility to the country, to the poor, then I think the church needs to seriously introspect. And that's exactly what I'm saying. We are not talking about mission and migration and its effect on people at all. Others?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I didn't get that. So you're emphasizing that the church should put a weight on staying here and be missional. Is that what you're saying? Or
well, yeah. I mean, just look at it. We have 2% Christians or 3% Christians in the country. Our per capita income is the lowest in the world. Our healthcare is in shambles. Our roads have potholes all over. We need a lot of people being the salt and light of this society. If we are not talking about our responsibility to the country, what is the point of it all? Why has Christ kept us here if we are not to be of service to others here? If the church cannot talk about it, there's something very wrong. That's my opinion.
Yeah, can
But I want the other panelists to speak up too.
Can I add on to it, because I have talked to Binoy at length on this topic.
You're muted. Billy, you're muted.
No, we can hear him. We can hear him.
You can hear him.
See, what the issue is basically because certain churches they teach prosperity gospel, where health and wealth is the main thing, and I think where Binoy comes from, where basically Binoy's in-laws come from, is in that particular context. And those kind of churches in Kerala, a good number of those churches are there in Kerala, which promote that kind of a teaching. And these pastors also, the churches benefit also from, because through the remittance that comes from their members abroad, they are also economically prospering. So the churches also prospering. So it benefits. You can say it's a theology of convenience in that particular church, because that helps. They encourage their members to go abroad, and their ministries and are all supported, and the pastors also live a wonderful, lavish lifestyles also. So from that point, it has economic concerns, right? And the theology is really faulty there. It's a lopsided theology towards prosperity, which is, see, the church is not a community that should be looking at inwardly, right? Getting money or resources or wealth within the community. Church is a community which is called to be a channel of blessing to others. It should be a community that should be sacrificing, being like the salt and the earth, dissolving and giving the taste. So that kind of it's a reverse kind of a theology of the gospel which is being taught in those churches. Sadly, what Binoy is saying is a reality in many churches, not just the charismatic and Pentecostal churches. I'm seeing this trend. Even I come from the Marthoma Church. right? So in the Marthoma Syrian community also, even though it's not even though it's not officially taught by the church, the compulsion is sometimes the church. See, the church also as an institution needs finances also. So the compulsion is to go along with the congregation strength, right? So for the finances, for because the church is also dependent on these foreign remittance, right? So it's between the devil and the deep sea kind of a thing as far as so there are churches which teach the prosperity gospel, there are churches which are silent, right, on what the calling of the church should be, right, because the church is benefiting, right. That is my take on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's a question in the chat. Unless one of the speakers wants to share the comment on this, yeah. Historically, migration carried the Christian faith to various shores. With the faith, they carried their cultures as well, and destroyed the local culture, which is looked at negatively today. So, can we talk about migration for mission? Is not mission living lives that are example of Christian value? Yeah.
I was thinking about this. Sorry if I may say something.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Sanjeev.
I was thinking which Bible verses come to my mind about migration from a biblical point of view. We know about the gathering of Israel. You know, in the last days, people or the chosen people will be gathered in their places, and then there'll be this war. That's of course prophecy according to the book of Revelation and other books in the Bible. But it is going on, and I think if it is done in a good way, there are so many good perspectives I was hearing. I have heard in this meeting that we have just discussed. So if we can just kind of come up with something, what the Bible says about this also. And another point which came to my mind is, how is China dealing? China has gone so ahead in economical and other things, and has become a strong power. What has been the migration scenario there? Thanks.
Yeah, let me take up both the questions to begin with, and then the others can come in as well. See, I would think that the question about the Bible verse that you talked about, which is if one were to look at what typically goes as what is called the Great Commission, the last two verses of the Gospel of Matthew, where Jesus is talking about going and making disciples of all nations. So there's an implicit going. And then he talked about them being his witnesses in Jerusalem, in Judea, Samaria, and at the uttermost parts of the earth. So it's really about going out with the living and preaching and making disciples of the nations of the earth. So that is in one sense a mission call to go to areas and reaching them with the gospel of Christ. So I think that is one way in which mission historically has led to Christians moving with the preaching of the gospel, living the gospel in different places, and that's how the gospel spread across the nations. And we've had different waves of missions, but clearly that is going outward. Now, in doing so, in some cases we have destroyed or we have tried to force our own culture or our own subculture on the existing culture of of those places. So rather than looking at what is the redemptive, and I think a lot of that learning has come today of what is it that we can bring to redeem the cultures of those places with the gospel. And I think that would ideally be answered not by someone coming from out, but ultimately by people from within those cultures recognizing and seeing it. And I think if you look at even the history of mission, a lot of mission work was even in helping the locals to understand the values and the benefits and the richness of their own culture. So not all mission work has destroyed cultures. In fact, many of them have actually enhanced cultures. Even in ways like having the dictionary of many of these languages, or using scripts to convert dialects to languages have all been part of mission. So mission has been holistic, not just about only preaching the gospel, but also about serving these communities so that they discover the richness of their history, heritage, and culture. But at the same time, being able to redeem some of the not so good elements of it. So whether it was the practice of sati, encouraging remarriage of widows, of education of girls. I mean, all these were part of mission movements in the past. So I think not all. So the question that was asked in the chat by Ms. Saldana, in one sense, is that it's not just destruction of culture, but there is a way in which you can also see enhancement and of the culture itself. So if you're looking at biblical verses from Sanjeev Sarkar's point of view, yeah, there are these verses. In fact, even when when people were carried out, taken away as exiles, as prisoners of war, and they were refugees in another country, they were actually told, for instance, the prophet Jeremiah says that to the country that you go, make sure that you work for the prosperity of the country where you go. So ultimately, the idea was to serve purposes which are even larger than themselves, be they migrants or otherwise. The question about China, which was asked, is that there is also a large diaspora Chinese population, and Chinese are also very large migrants. But both India and China, while we have seen growth in economic terms, we still are not anywhere close to where the West is. So India is a lower middle income country. Our per capita GDP in nominal terms is just about $2,700. We are probably 135th in the list of, in terms of the list of highest per capita GDP. We are not the lowest. There are countries in sub-Saharan Africa which are much worse than us. There are many parts of Asia which are worse than us. But there are many countries which are better. So the question is, do we go to those countries which are worse off, or do we go to the countries which are better off? And that's the question that we need to ask ourselves. Equally within India itself, and I think when you look at Kerala, and again coming back to Binoy's question, I think some of the benefits that Kerala has had by at least some of the people staying has been that it is one state in terms of its social indicators. It has had social indicators which are comparable to that of the US. And they have among the highest social indicators, among the best social indicators in the country. So whether it's in healthcare, education, Kerala is way ahead of the pack. Even economic indicators, though it may not be so much the per capita domestic GDP, just with remittances coming in, it has helped Kerala. So maybe the answer for many people in Kerala, and the reason why these arguments are that, ultimately you may not have enough economic opportunity in Kerala, depending on what Kerala is able to provide. And that is why many of us are as a result of that, of migration out of Kerala. But then they have moved to other parts of the country, which hopefully are more needy. So if you were to dovetail economic need with the need of mission, ultimately you will see that at the end of the day, probably the challenge for many of us as disciples of Jesus is to move into parts of India which otherwise have not had or heard the gospel, which need to see more and more of Christian work and witness, which needs to see more and more of our work and service, even in the little things, even in the small things. And I think we have done a fair bit of it. The question is, can we do even more of it? And that's really the whole point. And again, there are some, if you look at even the map that Jamila had put up, it is quite funny that sub-Saharan Africa, which is economically seen as among the worst of the places in the world, actually has a fairly high preponderance of Christian witness. Many of them are actually Christian nations. It's Northern Africa, which really is largely Muslim, which actually needs the gospel much more than sub-Saharan Africa from that point of view. And so the whole point is, at the end of the day, this needs to be discussed. This needs to be discussed by the church, by Christian community. This is not something silent. And we cannot say that this is just an individual and personal decision, and then because the church benefits from remittances, it is all great and good. No, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about the brain drain. We talked about reverse brain drain. It happened for some time, but again, that's changed. The pattern in the last 4-5 years has again seeing only increased migration back to the more prosperous nations. So the question is, and I'm glad that we are doing this. I'm glad that NMBF has organized this, that we talk about it and ultimately figure out what is our role and purpose in the whole area of migration, and therefore the benefits that it can have for Christian mission and witness itself. Thanks.
Yeah. If any of the speakers can feel free to jump in anytime, huh? So please not hesitate. Your views will be very valuable, and I think the Q&A is also so interesting. People should see it, so we might make it public. Yeah. If anybody wants to ask a question anonymously, you could send it to any of the speaker or to me, and it will be read without your name. That way, we could protect your privacy. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cincy, go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Billy, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just was asking Father Joseph if he can, because as a sociologist and who's seen from academic as well as from the church perspective, could comment on some the last few topics that just we discussed.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, about I was thinking that the former speaker has already addressed some of these. That's why I didn't want to take it up. It's a little complicated. One thing about what the observation of Virginia, particularly, there is a lot of consciousness across the world today about the violence of mission, the violence that missionary endeavor has committed on other cultures. And that is not just mission alone, but also colonialism, colonial settler colonialism and its violence. A lot of it is talked about. People are talking about reparation. And I think that language is very important about this. And then also the gospel mandate of preaching, and therefore intercultural kind of contact is at the heart of the gospel sharing of the gospels. And how can we do it without violence? And that's the question. And I think Dr. Cherian Thomas had something very substantial to talk about it. Yeah, so that's one. Then about this entire, I'm with what is happening with regard to the scale of migration across the nations. The idea of national boundaries is slowly losing its significance in a very interconnected world. In terms of serving the nation, you can serve the nation today by being abroad. You don't have to be here within the geographical boundaries, right? So I think there is a little bit of different ways in which we have to address it, because the nation is just not the geographical boundary anymore in a very interconnected kind of world. I can serve the interest of India being in Bahrain or being in Indonesia more maybe than being in Mumbai. So that's something that we need to keep in mind when we talk about the national interest and serving the nation. But I see the point. I see the point that two of the speakers made about the Nehruvian India and national interest and building institutions and how the state funded and all of that. No, but it is a bygone thing, and that age is never going to come back. So I don't know whether it is right or good or bad. I don't know. So that's my take on it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Cincy? Yeah. Okay. Dr. Jamila, you want to say something? Okay, fine. Cincy, go ahead.
No, see, actually, I had this thing about mission mindedness. Am I audible?
Yeah. Let's ask
Yeah.
our questions little politically neutral way, so that it
No,
doesn't
no.
online. We have more. We can put it online also. This.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Okay.
So this mission mindedness, it has always been. See, not every Christian has been mission minded or as radical as throughout the centuries. It has been the top 2 or 3% of Christians who have been mission minded in all that they do. So these are the people who go out and do missions, and they answer the call of God and go. So even in the current Christian church in India, it's the same, because most of the migrants are economic migrants. Now I agree, in some of these fields like say medicine, there is definitely a lack of number of people who are engaged in that. But in many other fields like say for teaching or even the corporate world, actually there are more number of people looking for a job than the number of opportunities available, right? And so people are forced, but to in fact, it is only the very top of the top who are actually able to stay back in India and make a good living. If you really want to have a decent living, it's better to migrate, because people who really don't make a lot of money, they will find it really difficult to live in India. So that is the economic reality here, and you cannot get away from that. Obviously, I think medicine is one area where there is definitely a lack of talent and there are a lot of opportunities to serve. But in most of the other fields, in fact, we have a problem of more number of people looking for less number of opportunities. So people are forced to migrate. The second thing is, we all talk about this brain drain thing. I have thought long and hard and deep about this issue, and I have come to the conclusion that this brain drain is a bogeyman created by a very ineffective, very apathetic, very corrupt government, to hide their failures. Abhi, think of it now. If these people hadn't migrated, what will the government do? Are they going to provide jobs for so many highly educated people? Now, we may talk about one or two examples of Dr. Varghese Kurian or Sam Pitroda, but those are what? Those are 0.0001% of people who passed out. So if these people hadn't migrated abroad, many of them might have been standing at street corners and twiddling their thumbs. So there is nothing like a brain drain in India because there are no opportunities in India. That is a fact. Because see, I'm in an industry, where we need to track various industries and see. I'm in the investing business, so we get to know how the jobs are created and how many opportunities and what are the kind of talent you need. And there is no brain drain actually. There are more than enough brains in India. The only thing is an apathetic government is not able to create sufficient opportunities. And it has been the case right from 1947 onwards. I'm not saying it is a recent thing. So, that is how it is. The Christian church is also constrained, and, people are obviously within that. There are people who do actually take sacrifices and who come back to India and who serve and who go to the villages. And there are people like that. But you can't expect 100% of all Christians to do that, because if 100% of all Christians were to do that, then most of the clergy will go, go hungry from tomorrow. They also need to be fed, right? In fact, the only stable job or only guaranteed job for a Christian in India is to be a pastor. So these are all economic realities. I have worked in corporate for 25 years, and this is what I observed. I've been a Christian in a church for so long. So these are the realities. So we should not beat ourselves into saying that we are not mission minded. And there are obviously we could be more mission minded, but the economic realities are much more different, and it is much more starker, and it's really not very good.
Okay, any response or we move ahead?
I agree with Cincy on his perspective, right? But then what happens is also, see, some of the economic benefits are there maybe in the Gulf countries and all, where taxes are very less. But if you look at the migrants into some of the countries like US, they're really slogging out. Cost of living is high, taxes are different, the tax systems are different. So, it's not an easy life, right, there in the US. Yeah, definitely from people who are migrated to the West for their job, for to the Gulf for their jobs, they have, because my family benefited from that. And I know that the benefits of even some of my peers, people who studied with me in college, a good number of them are in the Gulf and they're earning well, right? So yes, definitely you do have a point, and yeah, I agree with the whole aspect also. In fact, I mentioned also when I'm doing career guidance, also the job opportunities are also less. People are settling; those who are remaining back are settling for the jobs which they really didn't like, or settling for courses which they really didn't like because of the competition and the government is definitely there to be blamed for that, not creating the sufficient opportunities or not having the sufficient number of educational institutions, and not only educational institutions also. So one of the things the government fears also is like this: if you have a lot of talent and you're not able to provide the sufficient employment for that, then it will cause economic collapse. So from that point of view, also the government is playing that kind of a card. So I think the other problem also I noticed also, see, even people who are doing businesses, especially if you look at only the startup culture and all, it's been the last 10 years. The ease of doing business, the ease of even after the license Raj went off, right? Even if after the liberalization of the economy, the ease of doing business is very hard, right? And the corruption is also very hard. So that is why it's not easy to start a company and do businesses. So that is also one of the motivations. So partially the government if they can control the corruption and increase the ease of doing business and create more kind of job opportunities, then definitely you can say, some of the things that we talked about retaining the talent in the country, we can talk about it more better in that. So I definitely agree with you, I concur with you, right? That's why I said it's a mixed bag, in my presentation.
Yeah, I just
Well,
want to make one point
I
because
agree with you, Sidsi. I agree with
Yeah.
you that it is difficult and all that of course some people are forced to migrate, which is why we said right at the beginning, all of us said that there is a need sometimes to migrate, and it's an emotional issue for many. And yes, there are sometimes very legitimate and valid reasons to migrate. But I think we need to rethink that part about mission being only for a few, and that we can sort of leave the whole idea of mission as an optional thing for Christians, and that Christians need to sort of, or that is the job of the clergy, or those things I think are not options for us. This whole discussion was on migration and mission. We are discussing the whole role of Christians as living our lives as missional people. If we are not living our lives that way, there is something wrong, because that is not, as far as Christ was concerned, we were all called to be his disciples in a radical way. He has not made different levels of discipleship, isn't it? So I think that to put ourselves in that bracket that, okay, we don't need to take mission that seriously and we need to just see to our lives, I don't think that is a valid way of looking at it. Yes, there are real concerns about work and all that, but we have to integrate it with God's calling and with God's purpose for the world. It's not only about us, it's about the world. God is interested in Shalom for the whole world, for the whole country, for the needy parts of the world. So if we don't have that perspective, isn't there something missing in our faith walk? That's just what I would just like to talk about. I think we should talk about it more, that's all.
No, I agree. In fact, if you see, so I think we mentioned about Kerala, right? The only good that has happened to Kerala is that there are people who migrated. They did not stay back and build any God's kingdom in Kerala. They actually went to Gulf and tried to build God's kingdom sitting in the Gulf. That is the only thing that works. What I'm trying to say is, many people who go to US and all those places, they actually don't go only for the money that can be saved. In fact, at least they get to breathe good air and live in a free or liberal environment. That is also a big deal. And my children sometimes still blame me for not staying back in the US and giving them better opportunities. so your progeny and your generations, you have to take care of them also. So I'm not saying that we should not be mission oriented, but sometimes as Jesus said, when they persecute you in one city, go flee to the other. So sometimes the best mission that you can do is go out of India and send some money and help somebody who is out here.
Okay.
You can go from India and get persecuted in the US, right? So that also can happen.
Yeah, it can.
Particularly if you're now being accused of eating dogs and cats.
Okay, you're right. Any other question, any other comment? Please go ahead. Anybody wanting to ask any more question, any personal doubt? You're free to put it, go anonymously also, or you could put it on the chat. We will definitely be making the first part public. Not sure about the Q&A. Yeah. Right. Anyone? Yeah. So there have been cases where people have lost their jobs abroad and they have committed suicide, or there are young people who did not really have the courage to come back as failures also. So in that context, any comments on that? That going abroad, which is a great rosy picture, can actually be a trap also. So any comments on that, please?
Well, I said already that I get a lot of cases of people abroad who are struggling with all sorts of depressive and anxiety symptoms. So I think there is a huge that is a huge problem for many people, which they don't really confide in their family about, because one, they don't want to trouble their parents. They know that it's a very, very long distance. They can't come. So yeah, this is a real issue, and we're going to have to figure out ways to deal with it.
Yeah. And even for the parents, as you mentioned, because the kids they are sending abroad and they are not coming back, neither are they going to take them with them because they're going to remarry and their spouse may not want the parents or whatever. So those are also some of the,
Yes, I said often the parents get left behind, and that is not factored in when people go.
right.
I have a question to Father Joseph. Father Joseph, do you have any information about statistics of whether minorities in India migrate more than others? Christians, Muslims, are we migrating more than the other communities?
Yeah, there is statistics available, but I have not gone through it right now. There is this Dr. Irudaya Rajan from Trivandrum. He has entire data with him on religious lines, on caste lines, a lot of data, migration data.
Because
He
apparently
keeps on publishing.
Christians and Muslims are migrating at greater rates, right?
What I remember is that Muslims and Christians have a higher percentage of migration. Yeah, on the whole, yeah. But the picture seems to be changing as well, because right now there is a lot of migration from UP Bihar belt as well. So that's there. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Any comment on? I think there was a movie called Dunki in which people from Punjab were going through that those unhealthy channels and how they would marry for the sake of it and drug money and all of that. So, I mean, and Punjab has also seen the rise of prosperity gospel, I think. So, any comment in the context of that also?
I just wanted to make a comment about Muslim migration. And we see that a lot of people from Middle East, Muslim countries, they are going to Europe and they're settling down there. And, I was in England last year and I noticed in some places there were concentrations of the Muslim community. And it's in the Quran also. You'll notice. Then I was thinking about this and reading about this, that this migration, it's also taken like a moral kind of a duty or something like that. You go to a different nation and then you make more children there, increase your family, and then you take over the nation. And that's one important way that the Islamic religion has spread. So I just wanted to be say this as a comment.
Okay. Okay, I think time is up. 10:30 was the deadline. So thank you so much. Do any of the speakers, are they wanting to say something in the closing?
No, I'll just close and say that, look, at the end of the day, we can look at migration. And that was the first question that I had posed, which is that is migration just something that each of us considers in a very detached way? See it merely as a social or an economic phenomenon, or is there more to it than that? And that's why this whole migration and mission is what we are seeing together. And I think some of the comments that have come in are that if my faith is if it means anything to me as a disciple of Jesus, then can migration be mindless? Or do I migrate simply because I'm worried about my future or the future of my children? How does that, how does that stand up with what Jesus told his disciples, not to worry about the future and that God would take care of them? So irrespective of whether, of the economic arguments, the social arguments, or whatever is there, I mean, would we be able to see the whole decision to migrate or the reason to pursue higher studies? Look at it from the lens of scripture, which ultimately guides our thinking, isn't it? And I think that is the question that we need to ask. And that is probably what we need to discuss as a community, as a Christian community, more and more. No one's got solutions. There are, of course, different viewpoints. There are different sides to the whole question. And I would think that, yes, the fact that particularly, when you look at blue collar migration, as it is called, that seems to be sometimes the only way in which people can escape poverty. The brain drain is often talked about when the best leave, and ultimately this country which produces them loses them. And that's the larger point. No one is saying that we should find ways to keep them back, or go back to a very Nehruvian or socialist way of thinking. No, that's not the issue. That the issue is ultimately, what do we as Christians, who have benefited from the nation that we were born in, what do we see as our responsibility? Do we need to serve a larger purpose, and do we need to serve country and society beyond just thinking about our own narrow economic interests and our family's interests? That's the question that we need to keep asking and discussing.
Right. Any other speaker wants to share any comment here? All right, we want to thank you, all of you, for joining, especially our speakers, for giving your precious time. We apologize for the very small attendance. Most of the Indian Christians migrated this evening abroad, this evening. So we are the only remaining Christians in India now.